Definitely not all e-commerce platforms are creative equal in that way. Something that is a larger model, it might have 20 different Pinot Grigios, might not have the same attention to the storytelling that a smaller platform might have. So if I was trying to figure out how I would want my own wine sold in the US, and that was really important to me, I might focus my attention in a different e-commerce realm.
Welcome to Masterclass US Wine Market with me, Barbara Fitzgerald. In this show, we'll break down the complexities of selling wine in the US by discussing the relevant issues of today with experts from around the globe. Each episode serves up 3 key insights to help elevate your winery's presence in the US market. So grab a pen and paper and let's pave the way for your success in the US. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Masterclass US Wine Market. Today, I am very excited to welcome Emily Carlson to the show. Emily is a senior wine buyer for Last Bottle Inc., which is a California-based group of online wine retailers who sell fine wines direct to consumers across the U.S. And prior to that, she spent nearly 2 decades in the on-premise side of wine as a sommelier and wine director for some of the best restaurants in the country. So, Emily, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so excited to have you.
Thanks, Barbara. Thanks for having me. 2 decades. Wow.
I know. Just goes by in the blink of an eye.
Where does the time go? Yeah, exactly.
Well, before we dive into talking about e-commerce today for wine, can you tell us a little bit more about your background, Emily, and how you came to work in the wine business?
Yes, absolutely. I came to work in wine through restaurants. I started out as a pastry cook out of school, and one of my chefs so kindly told me that I talked too much for the kitchen. So I went to the front of house and I learned about wine and I fell in love with it and just continued on as a sommelier and a wine director, and kind of found my niche in 1 Michelin star restaurants. That's my preferred level of formality, I think. Once you get over that, it's too stuffy for me.
Well, that's great because then it also allows you to maybe interact with a bit more wine curious customers and not just people looking like for the most high-end option they can find.
Yes, absolutely. And that experience working in these higher end restaurants really drove me to want to enter the e-commerce world. After 6 or so years in that fine dining world, I wanted to talk about wine in a different way, and I wanted to reach a bigger audience than just the people that come to these incredible restaurants. Maybe you have the chance to talk to 40 people in one day. So having the opportunity to expand into a bigger world of customers, it's just been so awesome.
Well, that's fantastic. And one of the reasons why we're so excited to talk to you today, because e-commerce is such a fast and incredibly scalable way of reaching our US consumers. So as a senior wine buyer, Emily's expertise really is at the intersection of consumer behavior, platform economics, and producer storytelling, with a very real view of what actually converts interest into drinking and loyalty. So keeping that in mind, our 3 key takeaways for this episode and what we're very excited to learn from Emily are: number 1, e-commerce expands access in a very geographically fragmented US market. So especially when we're talking about reaching consumers outside of the main metro areas like New York, Chicago, Los Angeles. Number 2, US wine e-retail isn't just one model, and each platform creates different value for different producers. So Emily will help us to understand the different e-commerce models and routes to market. And then number 3, talking about the storytelling at scale and how that turns interest into emotional connection and attention into attachment. Exciting. Let's dive right in. So we said number 1, we talk about it all the time. The US is a very vast, very fragmented US wine market. And on top of that, it really is dependent on having a car to do the kind of shopping like wine because there's really uneven quality in retail. So outside of those major metro areas, many consumers live in what we might even call wine deserts, where grocery stores may be the only option for them. And e-commerce really starts to fill that gap by giving consumers access to smaller production, story-driven wines they might otherwise never encounter. So Emily, with all of that in mind, from your perspective, how does the sheer size and geography of the US shape the role e commerce is playing in discovering wines?
Yes, I say, and we talk about this all the time with the producers that we import in for working with on Last Bottle and Last Bubbles. Working in the United States is like working in 50 different countries at once, where if you're going in a traditional distribution market, you might be looking for a different distributor in 50 different states, and then trying to break down allocations into each of those states. I know some of my sommelier colleagues in smaller market states will be like, North Carolina only got allocated 6 bottles of Ravenel for the whole state. There's just not the access to all of the wines that you want if you're in a market that maybe is more overlooked by distributors or by producers, or because we don't have always the energy to enter into each one of these 50 different states. So e-commerce can open up opportunity and access to customers who don't want to drive an hour into their capital city to try to track down one of those bottles that got allocated to their market, or don't even have access to that, and being able to find wines that are interesting and unique and explore the world of wine is really possible through e-retail in a way that it's not always in these places that don't have the small wine store in their area.
And in your data specifically for Last Bottle and Last Bubbles, do you see a really big uptick in areas that are outside of these major metro spaces?
Well, we of course see a big volume of customers in the major metro areas as well. I think that's just where we have concentration of more wine savvy people, but we ship wine to nearly every state, and we see customers from as many states as we can legally sell wine to, and we see people who go out of their way to access those wines if maybe they have a different address than a state that someone might be able to ship into. So there's definitely demand all across the country for fine wine.
Yeah. And so what would you say, especially for consumers that don't live near, these independent wine shops or even, larger retail spaces like a Total Wine? Like what does e-commerce unlock for them that just simply isn't possible otherwise?
Yeah, I think diversity, the access to wines that maybe there isn't a large enough production to allocate to every market, or access to smaller producers that are not yet in their market, or maybe producers that haven't even been imported through traditional distributors and importers into the US. E-commerce can open up those wines to
Yeah.
folks.
And so you're kind of elevating the opportunity for exposure, right? So what does this mean, especially for producers that aren't from more traditional big appellation?
I think that it is just giving you the opportunity to talk to customers without having to travel a ton, without having to explain always where your wine is to your importer, who will then explain it to the distributor, who will explain it to a sommelier, who will explain it to their customers. So kind of having direct access to the customer's attention themselves is super helpful, and having a retailer that customers trust, and then asking them to introduce you to cool new wines, and I love X wine, but is there something else similar to that, is super important for the little guys and the little appellations, and getting the world of our wine to be more diverse. The
Yeah.
world of our wine. The wine we experience in the world.
Yeah. But I think also that's such an important call out that another thing that these sites, these e-commerce sites open up is, again, they're constantly building trust with their own consumers. So you know that the wines that they're bringing onto their platform are wines that their people are asking for or are going to in some way be interested in.
Yes, and definitely not all e-commerce platforms are creative equal in that way. Something that is a larger model, it might have 20 different Pinot Grigios, might not have the same attention to the storytelling that a smaller platform might have. So if I was trying to figure out how I would want my own wine sold in the US and that was really important to me, I might focus my attention in a different e-commerce realm.
Yeah, that is a great segue into our second takeaway, which is talking about, how kind of diverse just this landscape of e-commerce platforms is in the US. So let's just start with maybe some definitions. Can you break down what the major e-commerce models are in the US wine space and what each one does well?
Yes, for sure. Probably the best known are these large online marketplaces, the wine.coms, the Total Wines of the world that might have hundreds of different wines available on their sites. And what they do really well is access to a wide variety of product. And I think the customer that likes to shop there is someone that kind of knows what they're looking for before they go in. So if it's, oh, I'm looking for this producer or this region or this, I can search and find it. And there might be a couple sentences on the website about that specific wine. And that is a really cool way for people to find a bottle of Russian River Chardonnay and a bottle of Zabibo in the same shop.
Yeah.
Another side of the e-commerce market is kind of a smaller specialty e-retailer and someone who might have a specific focus, like all natural wine or all French wine or all Italian wine. And kind of what we do on First Bottle, it's a shoppable website, but more mimicking your local independent wine store, where the selection's smaller, but it's much more curated, and we're starting to build trust with our customers who try wines that we recommend, and then they have similar tastes also. So they'll continue to explore through us. And inside of that, we begin to have much more detailed explanations of each of the wines and the producers and the way that it's made. And we start doing things like food and wine pairings, and we do music pairings on First Bottle. So just really connecting the wine to the story a lot more. On First Bottle too, we take that a little bit further where there's a team of sommeliers on staff, the Somm Squad. So this is people that you can call up and say, hey, I had this wine. Can you get it for me? Or, hey, I just discovered this region and I love it. What else should I try? And that's really great for people who want quality, but maybe they don't want to filter through a giant website and they don't want to read 100 emails a month, but they want someone who's their person to talk to who understands their tastes.
Yeah, I love this. So it really is taking the independent retail model and that kind of personalized level of customer service and growing it at scale.
Yes, and bringing it to places maybe that isn't accessible, and also to your own time frame. I can be on an online website at midnight when I'm just like, oh, I really need some Alianico, and search for something, and we're not limited to the opening hours
Yeah.
of a wine shop or the attention that you get from a sommelier during dinner. We also have on Last Bubbles and Last Bottle what's called a flash site. So this is not a shoppable website, but a website that sells a single wine a day. And it is about access to something at a really exciting price and knowing that maybe you can't find it again the next day or month or year. And that's really a great way to connect to people and discover new customers that might not be willing to discover something at traditional line pricing, but once they do, they're going to be hooked. So we see that used a lot for marketing purposes with domestic wineries that maybe you had a fat vintage or you got access to a vineyard that you just couldn't say no to. And there's this kind of imbalance in supply and demand. And we want to reach a bunch of new customers without trying to figure out one by one how to get them into the winery or sell into a bunch of different restaurants. So having the story told through a single email for a single day, and then have hundreds of thousands of eyes on that wine and introduce it to new customers. And we've seen anecdotally, like the wines that we feature, then the uptick on a producer's own website after that to try to make a reorder, or to just, once it's on the radar, learn a little bit more.
Yeah. Is that kind of leaning a little bit into like gamification, because like it's a little bit of roulette for the customer, like you better have your email signals on or you're going to miss this.
It can be a little bit of, if you snooze, you lose, because it's one wine every day, right? So in that way it is. I don't think it's Russian roulette though, because it's always going to hit. It's
Right.
just, did you make it there in time?
No, not roulette for the wine quality. Absolutely. The wine quality is always there.
Yes. And selling wine in that manner, we have to build so much trust with our customers, because maybe it is a producer they haven't heard of, but from a region they've heard of before, or bottling that they haven't tried yet, or something like that. So over time, building that trust that you know what you buy from Last Bubbles and from Last Bottle is going to be super high quality, and you're not really rolling the dice in that way, has been instrumental to the success of the platforms.
Yeah. And are you able to say how many people you have on that mailing list?
We have different size mailing lists. Last Bottle is definitely the biggest. There's over 100,000 people on that email list. And the cool thing is that we don't have people that buy like every offer every day, but such a huge percentage of the list are active buyers throughout the year. So waiting for something that resonates with them and then jumping on that opportunity.
Yeah, but that is a significant base to be reaching, just so, some producers out there can understand kind of the breadth that this allows.
Yes, for sure. For sure. And definitely Last Bottle is the biggest by leaps and bounds. Also the original. So going on 15 years this year.
Nice. Very cool.
I think that what we have in the US that maybe isn't so popular in other countries is wine club. That's not a direct from a winery to a person, but showcasing many different wines to people. And that fills a really important niche to customers, because maybe these are people that don't want to put a lot of effort into selecting their own wines, but also don't want to be limited to just the selection that's at the stores they're already shopping at. It's the grocery store or the big box store. Having curated wines delivered to your house without having to put a lot of effort into it is really important for that client.
Yeah. Yeah. And definitely, the way subscription models are really not just for wine, but for products in general. It's like people in the US are learning to lean into subscribing for your products. So it's helpful to have something for wine in that space too.
Yes, absolutely. And I think the best ones are the ones that you can get very specific with your wants and needs. And if you're a white wine drinker, you can be in an all white wine club, or if you're an all bubbles drinker, you can find that too.
And it seems like those options everywhere in the US for whatever your all preference is, you're going to be able to find
Yes,
it most likely.
absolutely.
So put yourself into the position of an Italian producer. How do you think they should be choosing between these platforms?
Um, I would start thinking about how much effort I want to put into the US market, and if I want to be kind of minimal effort, high reward, I might go to something like a flash site where I can have a larger drop and have it exposed to a lot of people at once. If I want to put my wines into very specific wine shops and I have a distributor in those states, or I have a number of states that I want to work inside of, then maybe the smaller platform is best for me. And if I'm an Italian producer and I have a large enough volume that I can service all of the customers of the US, then of course one of those bigger marketplaces would probably be best. But inside of each of those things, I would really think about the team that I'm working with and find someone who has the level of transparency and the level of connection to your product that you trust them to tell your story and to let you know when, where, and how your wines are being sold into the US is super important.
Yeah. And nice that you have broken it down kind of based on their own size, their own goals. Another, I think, key piece that could be helpful, especially to these smaller producers, is that you don't have to immediately secure, 5, 6, 7 different distributor relationships, right? Like they just can kind of work with you through your distribution license and then you get it to other places in the country.
Yes, that is, you get a lot of bang for your buck in that way. You're not having to sell your product over and over and over again into different distributors to then turn around and sell that product into their own markets. So it's a good way to reach our big, vast audience and also to not get so lost inside of the space where everyone wants to be in New York. And so maybe you're one of 15 Alianicos in New York or 10 Gatinaros. I don't think there are that many, but
if there are 10 Gatinaras, we have to go find that place right now.
Yes. Maybe the Italian wine merchant. But yes, not missing the chance to talk to the larger US audience and not have to fight for the attention of more saturated market is probably super beneficial to your brand in the long run, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And maybe even just from a budgetary standpoint, when you're in these smaller markets, which have a lot of relevance, like, somewhere in the middle of the country, maybe St. Louis or something like that. If you're in on premise or even, off premise in those markets, you really have to show up there. You have to go there physically, work the market with your distributor, and through this e-commerce option, like you get to do more things virtually. So again, a little bit more bang for your buck in terms of your own time involvement.
Absolutely. Yes. And your own marketing budget. Are you sampling out 5% of your inventory every year to put it in front of people who will then put it in front of their customers? So you can send a sample to me directly. I'll give you my email address. Me and the team of buyers that I work with who are extraordinary will taste a wine and then purchase it and sell it to our customer base. And maybe that was 1 or 2 bottle sample instead of such a giant just outlay to try to get eyes on it.
Yeah. Well, that's a good segue into my next question because you mentioned to me in a previous conversation that your team likes to talk a lot about the power of liquid on lips, which it means trial essentially. And so why is that first moment of trial so powerful and even beyond immediate sales? And kind of what is your strategy since you're not face to face with the consumer of like capturing that moment of trial?
Yes, absolutely. And I will say that I can't take credit for that great phrasing. That belongs to my boss, Ryan Anderson. So thank you, Ryan, for that. But the idea to me, I think about my time as a sommelier and how I might buy a bottle of wine and put it on my wine list. And let's say I bought a case of wine. And a year from now, if it's a very niche wine, I might have 8 bottles left at the end of the year. So it was awesome to be on the wine list at a Michelin star restaurant, but if no one is tasting the wine, we're not getting that far and we're not getting any reorders. Then I think about what we can do in e-commerce where we're talking about a wine, people are getting excited enough to order it. The wine is coming to their house and they're drinking it. And that's the most important part. You can't fall in love with a wine while it sits on a shelf in a wine store or while it sits in the wine cellar of a restaurant. So first and foremost, getting people to drink your wine is so important. Wine isn't a precious commodity that we keep here, right? We should be enjoying it early and often. Something that we've seen on Last Bubbles, where because we're bringing in so much of the wines that we sell from Europe, we're bringing in more wines than we could sell in maybe one day. Maybe I'll sell it 2 or 3 times a year, or I'll sell one wine from a producer and then later on in the year I might sell another bottling. And when we sell a wine and then we're reoffering out, the demand is always so much higher. And we see so many reorders of people who bought a wine, had it delivered to your house, drank it, and loved it enough to want to order it again. And you don't always have that opportunity if you're being sold through a restaurant or through a specialty wine store where it might not always be available. Or we talk again about wine allocations where a whole state might just get a little tiny bit. So if I love a wine, I can't always find it again.
Yeah. So you're seeing like a good connection with the producers that you have curated in your list and even the select bottling.
Yes, definitely. We see that every time a wine is offered again, it will be some of the same customers reordering and some new customers who just needed a second time hearing this story too. One of the things that we've seen so important in the way that we sell wine, if we're going to sell it further down the road or another bottling from the same producer, is telling the story and then expanding on the way that we tell the story next time. And kind of maybe we're finding something that's very unique about the producer or about the winery and highlighting that the second time around that wasn't mentioned the first time, but we're adding connection to our customers, and it has a very positive response.
That's great. So, what have you learned about audience overlap or maybe lack of overlap across these different kind of e-commerce channel models, especially since you kind of operate two different ones just within your own brand?
Yes, we see a little bit of overlap, but not a tremendous amount. And I think that's because there are customers who like to shop in very different ways. And on a site like Last Bottle or Last Bubbles, you're required to pay a little more attention to your email inbox on a daily basis. And then there are customers who prefer to maybe get one email that sparks them to go discover what else is for sale. And a platform like First Bottle is great for that. But there's not always the same overlap in customers that like to shop both ways.
Yeah, interesting. So it's kind of like speaking to people's motivations are pretty, I don't know, they don't change that much over time, I guess, the reasons.
Yes, I think it's about convenience and what works for you. And we're all our own unique people, and there's something for everyone. And we would like to have something to offer every customer.
That's great. Well, let's segue now to our third takeaway. You've kind of weaved in some bits and pieces of this along the way, but talking about the ability to have long form storytelling associated with these wines that you have on your site. So, how does storytelling in e-commerce compare to storytelling, on the floor of a restaurant where time and attention are really limited?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Because on a restaurant floor, maybe I have, if I'm lucky, 3 minutes at your table to ask about your wine preferences and then talk about a couple wines that might fit what you're looking for this evening. Or I'm doing a tasting menu and I have a couple of minutes to introduce the wine and a little bit about the story and why it's such a beautiful pairing. And then at the corner of my eye, I can see, and the server is coming with your dish. And so trying to cram that interaction and connection into a small period of time, especially one that there's also other tables who are needing to have this one-on-one experience too. That is definitely something that we struggle with on the restaurant floor, and something that we get the benefit of having time and attention of a customer whenever they have the time and attention to read something. So you can read an email about a wine in bed in the morning when you're just scrolling your phone, or on your lunch break, or when you're cooking dinner and you're like, oh, what should I pair with this? And then you remember that you don't have anything that would be great with this, so let's buy something. So we're not limited in that time. It's like this everlasting sommelier experience that's just waiting on the internet for you to read it.
Yeah. You also have the benefit of seeing people's past purchase history. So it actually helps you then make better, more informed decisions for them. And you don't, when somebody's in your restaurant, you don't know that what they've drank in the
Yes,
past and what they really enjoy.
absolutely. Absolutely. And that is something that we work so hard as restaurant sommeliers to figure out without asking very intrusive questions about your budget or your likes when you're in the middle of a dinner date or something. Yes, that is peeking behind the curtains is another way that e-commerce allows us to really recommend things and tailor what we send to people. So we're sending the right wine to the right people. And that's something that the Som Squad at First Bottle does so well too, because they'll take that even further. And maybe you're a customer who doesn't even want to read a single email, but you want to buy cool wines. So if you can call someone up and tell them, and they can make selections and send them to you. We can also help people who don't want to read a long form.
I think you're touching on such an important point here, which is, in the world of like ever contracting budgets and time being spread so thin, when we tell, small producers, like you have to segment your customers and figure out, all of these kind of avatars, who this one is, and talk to them separately. And that's really daunting for somebody who's already wearing 4 hats. And so by working with an e-commerce brand like you, your team has the bandwidth to do all the segmentation. So the right offer is being put in front of the right person. So if you make Nebbiolo, it's not being put in front of somebody who says, I don't drink red wine.
Yes, absolutely. And I will never go to the winery partners that we work with and say, could you make wine like X, Y, and Z?
Right.
Your job is to make the most beautiful possible wine, and my job is to sell it to the right people.
Yeah, very cool. So when talking again about storytelling, why do you think these like personal details about producers, like what they're passionate about or what's kind of quirky about them, why does this resonate so strongly with the customers?
I think it's really about forming meaningful connection to a specific wine. And on the restaurant floor, I'll contrast, and you might say, oh, remember when we were out to dinner and we had that awesome Pinot? What was it called again? But if you have the time to have an interaction with a sommelier who can say, oh, you love X winemaker? Well, did you know their assistant winemaker has this other brand? Now, all of a sudden, you're in the know on some, not industry secret, but some insider information. And the same is true for a connection. If I can tell you that the winemaker of this winery is in a David Bowie cover band, and then you're like, well, I'm a Bowie fan too. And all of a sudden that wine and this thing are cemented in our brains together. So finding that connection and that way to have a specific wine really be remembered is super important. And that is why we see repeat customers and people who are really connected to specific brands.
Yeah, I love that. Just like people want to see themselves in the brands that they're associating with.
Yes, absolutely. Or see something that makes it beyond a bottle of wine and
Right.
into something made by someone from some place. Yeah, something that resonates.
Yeah. I think that resonance is so important when we're talking about selling wine without the liquid on lips piece, right? When you're talking about selling a product that can't have trial in that moment.
Yes, absolutely. And this is probably one of the things that I found to be the biggest difference from working in a restaurant as a sommelier and to e-retail, which is that I think almost never was anyone ever asking me what the score of a wine was. And you, as the sommelier and the expert, you kind of are that third party verification, like this is going to be good. But in e-retail, we've just seen so much that having someone else's opinion that's not mine, although I think I have a great opinion, but maybe a reviewer, or if I can see what some of my peers are writing on Cellar Tracker, these things are so much more important than ever in a restaurant scenario.
Definitely. And what about back to the storytelling piece? What about like photography, the firsthand relationships you have with producers? How is this showing up in customer engagement and loyalty?
That is so important to what we do. And we travel multiple times a year to meet producers. And of course, we're trying to taste through and find the next coolest wine to introduce you to. But we're also visiting producers that we have long-term relations with and finding out a cool story to tell and take pictures and show behind the scenes what's happening. And that kind of serves two purposes. One, like you don't know me, I'm behind a computer, but it allows a little bit more insight into the process and how stringent we are in tasting for quality before we'll put anything on one of our websites. So that kind of is another level of confidence that we can give our customers. And it's also another way to connect the person to the wine that they're going to drink and purchase. And they can see, oh, look at that winery's cute dog. That looks like my cousin's dog, or whatever
Yes.
it is, to put you a little bit more inside of the winery and how we made that decision to sell it.
Yeah. And so you mentioned that you are traveling often to European wine regions. When looking for new partners, are you looking specifically for people who don't have distribution in the US, or do you have a strategy around that?
Yeah, because we do work a lot with distributors in the US, we don't want to step on any toes
Yeah.
or anything in that realm. So when we're traveling to Europe, we are definitely looking for people who don't have distribution, are looking to get into the US market, and are looking to do it in this way that is how we like to sell wine. And we have conversations all the time with people. If what's super important to you is to be on the menu at a 3 Michelin star restaurant, then there's a distributor that will help you with that. If you're looking to sell to people and have them drink and enjoy the wine on a semi-regular basis, like, we can help you with that.
Yeah. But I think that's a really important call out because, again, in this kind of very trying time to be selling wine, there are so many newer producers who don't have distribution yet and don't even know how to go about it. And you could be a really fantastic entry point.
Yes, and we are actively looking for producers to work with in Italy.
All right.
Shoot me a message.
Yeah. I do have one final question on this, actually. So, because you have really spanned both sides of the pond, do you see e-commerce as an extension of the sommelier role, just delivered in a different format?
Yes, I do. Also, it's like the sommelier role, but if I had an hour to talk to every table. I also do some wine educating through WSET, and the level of storytelling about places that we can do online and in writing is a bit more similar to a class that you could teach or take if that's what you're looking for. If you're looking for an elevator pitch, there's also a website that will give you the bullet points of why a wine is amazing and you should try it. But it is a very similar role with a much bigger view.
Yeah. Again, just kind of like taking all of these personal relationships like you can have with an independent retailer, like you can have with a sommelier in a beautiful restaurant, and scaling it.
Yes, that's what we're aiming to do.
Oh, okay. Well, Emily, you have given us so many fantastic insights, some actionable things that people can think about right away, which is always great. And here we like to wrap up our show with a rapid fire quiz where we ask our guests 3 questions to help the listeners better understand the US market and really specifically this episode. So if you can, just answer in a couple sentences. Number 1, what is one thing an Italian producer should consider when creating a partnership with an e-commerce platform?
I would say the most important thing is to connect with the people that you're going to trust with your brand. So let's meet, let's talk, let's understand what each other are looking for and be really honest about that. And not every platform is a fit for every producer. So taking the time to do a little bit of interviewing and finding out who's going to be the right one.
That is very great insight. Yeah. Like you said, value on both sides. What does each side want? It's like the fastest way to draw a negotiation is to not understand what the other side is looking for.
Absolutely. Or to have a short-term partnership. We would like to have very long relationships with the people that we work with.
That's very lovely to hear. Okay, number 2, what is something you would have told your younger professional self about working in the wine industry?
I would have told myself, get into it earlier. It's going to be so fun. And you're going to have so many experiences that you cannot pay for.
This coming from somebody who got into it, in their early 20s? So
Yes, it might not have been legal, but I wish I started earlier.
It is a very special industry. I agree fully. Okay, you were just telling us earlier about how much travel you and your team do to meet producers and curate relationships. So what is like one very practical piece of travel advice you have for people when they're doing market work?
Yes, I have such a regimen when I am traveling, and it starts with like a probiotic and it ends the evening with a full water bottle filled with one of those hydration tablets, because I know that we're in it for a long day and I want to be at my peak every day. So making time to do those things.
Digestion and hydration. Spoken like a
Yes.
true older millennial.
I was going to say, as we get older, much more important.
Emily, now that we've got through this amazing conversation, I want to share with everyone that not only is Emily a fantastic senior wine buyer, she's also one of my dearest friends in the world. So, such a pleasure to have you here. How can our guests get in touch with you?
Well, thank you for having me, Barbara. It's been a pleasure. It's always a pleasure when I get to hang out with you. But it's been really fun, and I hope that is helpful for your listeners. But you can email me directly, ecarlson@lastbottlewines.com. And if you're interested in the platforms that we run, we have Last Bottle, which is Last Bottle Wines on Instagram. We have First Bottle Wines @First Bottle Wines, and Last Bubbles, which is Last_Bubbles on Instagram.
Awesome. And don't forget, everyone, she said they're actively seeking out producers in Italy. So get in touch.
We are. Top of my wish list.
Top of her wish list.
Top of my wish list is a spectacular Franciacorta producer.
I will be in line to purchase a spectacular Franciacorta. Thank you so much, Emily. I know I'll see you very soon.
Thank you, Barbara.
Ciao.
Ciao.
And that's a wrap for this episode of Masterclass US Wine Market. Thank you so much for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode and want to stay up to date with the latest industry trends, remember to like, follow, and share our podcast. And if you find value in our conversations, please leave us a review to help others discover the show and grow our community. Stay tuned for new episodes every Monday. Until then, brindiamo il vostro successo!